Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining us on another Try Science, and let's see where we're leaving off. Today we're into the cell theory. Guys, if you don't have your packet yet, grab that out. Don't forget to check Schoology for all the homework, including the organelle homework that's due coming up on Friday. Make sure you know your cell organelles. I recommend you check back and look at the online lessons if you are missing any of those notes. What's cell theory? First, let's check homework. Get into our question of the day and continue on with the lesson. First question, is fire alive or not? Well, in order to be considered alive, things need to do all of the life processes. Life processes are right here on the board on your screen using energy, grow, develop, respond to the environment, adapt, reproduce, and levels of organization. Let's think about it for fire. Fire is all about energy. So I definitely would think about that. A fire, it seems, can grow. I've seen them get small to large. Responding, I know they don't like to be where water is. Is that a response to the environment? As far as adapt, are there different forms of fire? Well, if you've got a wood stove, you've got a certain kind of fire. If you've got a gas stove with a blue flame, that's quite a different kind of flame. Maybe that's an adaptation. Fire can jump and reproduce and spread. Levels of organization. Okay, what were those? Let's see. CTOSO. C for cells, tissues, organs. Well, I'm stuck here because I don't think fires have an organization. They're just a chemical reaction, right? So they're missing something. Fire is not considered a living thing. It's not made of cells and has no levels of organization. Remember, even if something looks like it's alive, it needs to have all of the life processes. Let's review the life processes. We have this in our packet. It's also something you've done in Schoology. Let's take a look. And filling in the spaces with the correct words, which ones make the most sense? Some of these are in the wrong spot. Levels of organization does not go here. Living things use energy, released from food. Living things having organs that work together is what we just talked about. What fire is missing? The five senses is how you respond to the environment. And without reproduction, species go extinct. Caterpillars can metamorphosize as they grow and develop, and species adapt over time to respond to changing environmental conditions. You could do any pictures or cartoons you'd like for each of these. Adaptations could include the beaks of different birds that are adapted to different food sources. What's your phrase for remembering CTOSO? I've got some favorites. Continue organize, some oars. Responding to the environment could be you sweating on a hot day, growing, and using energy. So feel free to cartoon in anything that might help you remember the 6 life processes. Today we're going to talk about a theory about cells, a theory that became an actuality. In science, we don't use the word theory like we might use it about a sporting event or your thoughts about what lunch will be coming up next week. A theory in science means proven models based on what we know. Everything we know so far about cells tells us 3 things. All living things are made of cells. Cells are the basic or smallest, most simple unit of life. There's nothing smaller or more simple than a cell that's alive. And cells can only come from other cells. All of these may seem simple and pretty straightforward to you, but remember, you're living in 2020. People who lived a few hundred years ago didn't have the tools, weren't able to see a cell. The microscope was the big invention that changed everything and made the cell theory something that could actually become a reality.
That when scientists make a discovery, it's not always in a prescribed manner, as in only in a laboratory under strict settings with white lab coats and all sorts of neat science gizmos that go beep. In reality, the events and people involved in some of the major scientific discoveries are as weird and varied as they get. My case in point, the weird history of the cell theory. There are 3 parts to the cell theory. 1. All organisms are composed of 1 or more cells. 2, the cell is the basic unit of structure and organization in organisms. And 3, all cells come from pre-existing cells. To be honest, this all sounds incredibly boring until you dig a little deeper into how the world of microscopic organisms and this theory came to be. It all started in the early 1600s in the Netherlands, where a spectacle maker named Zacharias Janssen is said to have come up with the first compound microscope, along with the first telescope. Both claims are often disputed, as apparently he wasn't the only bored guy with a ton of glass lenses to play with at the time. Despite this, the microscope soon became a hot item that every naturalist or scientist at the time wanted to play with, making it much like the iPad of its day. One such person was a fellow Dutchman by the name of Anton van Leeuwenhoek, who heard about these microscope doohickeys, and instead of going out and buying one, he decided to make his own. And it was a strange little contraption indeed, as it looked more like a tiny paddle the size of a sunglass lens. If he had stuck two together, it probably would have made a wicked set of sunglasses that you couldn't see much out of. Anywho, once Leeuwenhoek had his microscope ready, he went to town looking at anything and everything he could with them, including the gunk on his teeth. Yes, you heard right. He actually discovered bacteria by looking at dental scrapings, which, when you keep in mind that people didn't brush their teeth much, if at all, back then, he must have had a lovely bunch of bacteria to look at. When he wrote about his discovery, he didn't call them bacteria as we know them today, but he called them animalcules because they looked like little animals to him. While Leeuwenhoek was staring at his teeth gunk, he was also sending letters to a scientific colleague in England by the name of Robert Hooke. Hooke was a guy who really loved all aspects of science, so he dabbled in a little bit of everything, including physics, chemistry, and biology. Thus it is Hooke who we can thank for the term the cell, as he was looking at a piece of cork under his microscope, and the little chambers he saw reminded him of cells, or the rooms monks slept in their monasteries.
Hey, if you want to watch more of that, I'll put it in our online video links. Make sure you check Schoology for all the added attractions. But it's really important that you understand these three things are things we know about cells, mostly by looking at them with microscopes. Now, we can look at cells of all kinds of things and notice that there are two classifications. There are cells that contain a membrane around the nucleus. That includes all the cells in animals, plants, fungi, and protists. Protists are what make your pool green in the summer. They're algae. See it also in the lake or rivers or ponds. This word is pronounced eukaryotic. Eukaryotic. Eukaryotic cells contain a membrane around the nucleus. Remember, the nucleus is the center which the DNA is found in. And having a membrane or a wrapper around that DNA is a pretty nice idea, keeping it contained and organized and in one place. So you care about your DNA. Eukaryotic cells include a nucleus around their DNA. Some cells, however, when looked at under the microscope, don't have a nucleus. These are the bacteria. These cells are very similar in many ways to plants and animals and other in the group, but they don't have a nucleus or a wrapper around their DNA. Prokaryotic cells. So which of these cells would be an animal cell? Did you guess the one on the left? Right. You care about your nucleus. Here it is. All the DNA is wrapped up. The bacteria cell, the DNA is just loose. Squiggly DNA all over the cell. Let's flip the page and talk about animal versus plant, because there are some real good adaptations that both have come down with for survival. Let's start with the plant. Plant cells have cell walls, literally a wall around their cell, made of a hard material called cellulose. You can see it in wood. Wood is just a bunch of cellulose, where all the plant cells have dried up and gone away, but the cellulose of the walls still remains. And if you used a microscope, you'd see the little rooms or cells. They look like little rectangles where the cells used to be. This gives the cell support and protection, but the drawback is it's rigid and they can't move. Plants aren't very flexible. Chloroplasts are literally green organelles within a cell that can make food for the plant. Photosynthesis uses carbon dioxide and water and sunlight and turns that into sugar. The photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplasts. Plant cells need large vacuoles, basically a water bottle within each cell. Why? Because plant cells can't move, so storing water becomes very important. Here's a plant cell. Most artists will draw them green. However, the only thing that's really colored would be these chloroplasts with the green membranes. Vacuoles, storing water, mitochondria making energy. Here's our nucleus. It is eukaryotic. And then that wall will give it an angular shape. What if we could journey into a plant cell? What would we see? As we enter the plant cell, we get closer and closer to the leaf. What do we notice? Well, notice your size shrinking down. You're now about the size of an ant. You'll soon be coming up to the surface of the leaf. We might begin to start seeing some cells. I see some. There's some rectangular shapes there. Those are the cells. We're heading for an opening that will take us into the leaf. That's called a stoma. It allows gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide to get into and out of the leaf. As we enter the leaf, we're surrounded by a spongy layer of cells. These cells have green chloroplasts absorbing sunlight and carbon dioxide. All the space around here is to allow that carbon dioxide to reach our cells. As we approach one individual plant cell and enter, we see organelles like the endoplasmic reticulum, the vacuole, mitochondria, and green chloroplasts. As you continue on your journey, you're getting smaller and smaller. Chloroplasts are tiny members of the cell. As we approach the chloroplast and prepare to shrink ourselves down even farther so that we can enter in through the membrane. Here we are inside the chloroplast. Those green discs are like solar collectors, taking energy from the sun, carbon dioxide, and water in a special chemical reaction called photosynthesis. As you get closer, you can actually see molecules, proteins with moving parts that are assembling sugar molecules out of carbon dioxide and water. The amazing process is happening all the time in plant cells. With the power of the sun, plant cells are creating food. Food that they can use in their mitochondria for energy, food that you can use as an animal if you eat them. And we're back from our journey into the plant cell, and now we can think about an animal cell. What's different? Well, animal cells have no cell wall. No cell wall, they don't have that protection, that hard rigid layer, but they are flexible, which means, you got it, you can move. No chloroplasts, so no laying around in the sun and turning carbon dioxide and water into food. You, as an animal, must eat food to survive. And smaller vacuoles, but you don't need a big vacuole. Animals can move to get water. Okay, well, as we complete our animal versus plant notes, we now realize we have time to work on our organelle homework in Schoology or any other assignments that are due. It's been fun taking this journey with you. Thanks for trying science, and I'll see you on the next one. Eukaryotes.